Hello and welcome to She Rises. This is a podcast for Christian women who love God and want their hearts and homes shaped by truth and not just good intentions. In this series, we've been exploring faith in real motherhood, not just in the quiet seasons or the disappointing ones, but also in the moments when obedience asked us to step forward. I'm Johanne Hewlett, and I'm so glad that you're here today. Have you felt that kind of hesitation that surfaces when God is nudging you towards something new? It may not be dramatic. It may not even be visible to anyone else. Perhaps it's the idea of starting a small project or pursuing a qualification or applying for something, having a difficult but necessary conversation, or adjusting a boundary, maybe launching a business idea that has lingered quietly in your mind. Often, the first response is not excitement, it's caution. What if I'm not ready? Or what if I fail? Or what if I misheard God? What if I disrupt the balance we've finally achieved in the family? Fear of failure has a way of disguising itself as wisdom. It tells you that restraint equals maturity, that staying where you are equals stability, that avoiding risks equals faithfulness. But sometimes what feels safe is simply small. Motherhood requires faithfulness in the present moment. It asks for steadiness in routines and resilience in repetition. Yet being a mother does not cancel out calling. God forms women who nurture homes and steward gifts. These things are not in competition. What often paralyzes us is not the lack of ability, but fear of misstep. If you've experienced setbacks before or seasons where things did not unfold as planned, the memory of those disappointments can make new beginnings feel dangerous. Yet Scripture is filled with ordinary people who step forward without guarantees. Abraham left familiarity without a map. Esther risked misunderstanding and rejection. Peter stepped out of the boat before he knew how steady the water would feel beneath his feet. Obedience rarely arrives with certainty. It arrives with invitation. One of the quiet myths many Christian women carry is that they must feel fully prepared before they begin. We tell ourselves we need more clarity, more skill, more confidence. Only then will we move. But confidence often follows obedience. It rarely precedes it. If you wait until fear disappears entirely, you may wait indefinitely. The question is not whether you feel fearless. The question is whether you're willing to move faithfully despite the fear. There is a difference. Fear says, if this fails, it proves something about me. Faith says, if this fails, God remains faithful. That distinction changes everything. When I began writing and building the work that eventually became the ministry by the book, I did not feel especially brave. I felt aware of my limitations. I knew there would be gaps in my learning, gaps in my understanding. I knew not everything would unfold smoothly, but I also sensed a responsibility not to succeed impressively, but to steward what had been placed in my hands. And that reframing was really freeing. When the goal shifts from proving yourself to stewarding faithfully, fear loses some of its power. Success becomes obedience rather than applause. Failure becomes feedback rather than identity. In By the Book, I talk about building with purpose rather than performance, about aligning your work with conviction rather than comparison. And that principle applies just as much to motherhood as it does to business or to creative pursuits. We do not step forward to impress. We step forward to obey. It is important to say that stepping into something new doesn't mean abandoning wisdom. Prayer, counsel, and thoughtful planning do matter, but sometimes over planning is simply delayed obedience. There are moments when the next faithful step is small and uncomfortable. Sending the email, having the conversation, registering the idea, or signing up for the course, drawing a new boundary, or making the first outline. Faithfulness often looks unremarkable in the beginning. What makes it significant is not scale, but surrender. Fear will whisper that you're too late, too inexperienced, too inconsistent. It will remind you of past setbacks, and it will suggest that history will repeat itself. But fear is not a reliable guide. God's call does not require perfection. It requires trust, and trust grows as you move. You may not know the full outcome of what you're beginning. Very few biblical stories begin with full clarity. What they begin with is obedience in the present moment. The same God who sustains you in silence and strengthens you through setbacks also equips you for new steps. He is not surprised by your limitations. Stepping into something new is not separate from the spiritual maturity we've been discussing. It's part of it. When you move forward despite fear, you reinforce trust. When you choose obedience over comfort, you strengthen steadiness. When you allow yourself to begin imperfectly, you dismantle the belief that failure defines you. Formation happens not only in waiting, but in the moving forward. If you sense that God is nudging you towards something, whether in your home, your work, or in your wider calling, and fear has been holding you back, Rise and Restore can help you. It can stabilize your thinking and align your next steps with truth rather than anxiety. And you can find the details in the show notes. Please remember to use the code podcast for 25% off. And if you're specifically exploring business, creativity, or building something purposeful beyond your home, then my book, By the Book, walks through how to build with conviction and clarity rather than comparison and pressure. It is about stewarding what God has entrusted to you with wisdom and intention. You do not need to choose between faithfulness and courage. Often they are the same thing. This week's gentle nudge is to identify one step you've been postponing because of fear. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It may simply be beginning the outline, making the phone call, or setting the boundary. Bring it before God. Bring it before God honestly, and then take the smallest faithful action available to you. Movement strengthens confidence. Next week, we'll close this series by talking about decluttering your life with God, both spiritually and practically, so that what matters most has room to grow. Until next time, walk faithfully, rest deeply, and keep rising steadily.